No plot? Poor grammar? Misspelling? Oh my. Hello, my bookworms, and welcome to today's review on Beautiful Life by Claire Flyte. This book, you guys, dear God, this book. Let me tell you one thing about this book. I wanted to bash my head in with this book. I mean, legit wanted just to take it and bash my head in. Instead, I took my pen to it. No offense to Clara Clark, but seriously, she needs to learn what a comma is, when to use it, and if she is going to use it, don't be freaking comma happy about it. When you guys saw me read the synopsis on the back, you probably saw me make a little bit of faces there. The first sentence on the back, you guys. When other people inquired about her name, or her family, or remarked upon her unusual accent. Okay, now that, okay, it's not too horrible, but for the back panel, there should probably be a comma, like, when people inquired about her name, comma, her family, or remarked upon her unusual accent. That would have worked. You don't need two ors. You don't. And it's not just the back panel that's like this. It's the entire book. And it just drove me up a wall. And my OCD kicked in and it's like, I cannot enjoy this story until I fix it. And I didn't enjoy the story anyway, so it's okay. Another thing Claire Clark really needs to learn, how to form a plot line, because I'm sorry, although she had a bunch of scattered plot lines, in the end, none of it had to do with anything, and that just bothered the living shit out of me. And I mean, it's not like A Dangerous Inheritance, where you have a bunch of plot lines going on that, intertwine with each other and make sense. No, no, no. This book instead is a bunch of plot lines that just drop off the face of the book. I understand there's some stories like this, Casual Vacancy for instance, but in the end, all of it seemed to kind of come together. With this story, however, it's nothing like that. You're kind of left sitting there going, I read this why? I wasted my time and reading ability on this why? On the plus side, reading this, I'm sitting there going, shouldn't be too hard to get published. Shouldn't be too hard. I'm going to read to you guys the actual synopsis that's written for this book on the inside panel instead of, what's there. It is 1887, and an unsettled London is preparing for Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee. For Maribel Campbell-Lowe, the beautiful bohemian wife of a maverick politician, it is the year she plans to make her own mark on the world. But her husband's outspoken views inspire enmity as well as admiration. And the wife of a member of parliament should not be holding the kind of secrets Maribel has buried in her past. When a notorious newspaper editor begins to take an uncommon interest in her, Maribel fears he will destroy not only her husband's career, but both of their reputations. That sounds like a solid plotline going. You have Maribel, who has her deep, dark secrets. Her husband's this politician that, shouldn't clearly be married to someone who has these kind of secrets. And then you have this notorious editor from a newspaper that could ruin their lives. And you're like, oh my god, this sounds like it would be a good story. You have a solid plot line. No, you don't. I'm going to give you guys my own little personal synopsis of this book. I'm going to try and keep it as mild-mannered as I can because I'm very passionate about my hatred for this book. Considering I spent 14 pounds on it. Maybe 15. I don't exactly remember. But it was a lot of money because it was a hardback. This story begins with a game, a family playing a game, and okay, it has Maribel and her husband Edward in it, but I don't understand the point of the game. It was pointless. It was not a hook. I felt bored. The story then goes on that Maribel receives this letter from her mother, someone she hasn't spoken to for years. Maribel's kind of torn between if she wants to go see her mother because she's afraid if she's seen with her mother, people are going to put two and two together, associate her with this bad past, and then, everything's going to crumble to bits. Her husband, on the other hand, although he doesn't really want her to go, is kind of like, no, you need to go. It could be an emergency, things like that. Immediately, you're kind of like, oh my god, this is the plot line. It's a family plot line. There's a dirty family secret going on. This is the plot line. So Maribel goes off to meet her mother. She sees her sister. I don't remember her sister's name. It's plain Doe because she was very plain and boring. So she goes and she meets her sister, and she is like, oh, I don't really want to be here. What's going on? And she's kind of being kind of prissy and nasty to her family. Turns out her mother your sister's husband needs help, and since your husband's a politician, you should help her. Okay, not the storyline. A bit disappointed because you're like, I could find out some dirty family secrets in this. You don't. So Maribel goes to her husband and is like, should we help them? And he's kind of like, no, that could ruin my career. Are you stupid? So no, they don't help him. You think that's the last time she's going to hear from her family? No, it's not. The next few chapters is kind of just Maribel lounging around the house like a lady of leisure. She's kind of getting all pissy because her husband's not there because he's off working and he's going to Scotland and London and all over the freaking place because he's a politician, and I don't understand it, but he doesn't get home till like 1 o'clock in the morning, and she's kind of getting upset about it. So one day she snaps at him, and he kind of feels guilty about it, so he buys her a camera. With her camera, Maribel then goes and photographs her friend, I guess who's pregnant or something. When she's developing these photographs, the guy who owns the dark room, he is looking at the photographs or happened upon them, something, and he tells her, this is spirit photography. There's like a blob at like the pregnant lady's knee, and he's like, that's a spirit, and she kind of dismisses it, but he kind of is very adamant about it, and he's like, no, it's a spirit, it looks like a little boy. Okay, her reaction. Maribel then freaks out and she runs from the building in tears, and you're kind of like, okay, something's happening. She's freaking out because of the spirit of a little boy. Oh my god, pieces of the puzzle are fitting into place. No, they're not. Maribel takes the picture to her friend because she's kind of like freaked out by it, and her friend's like, no, it's just a smudge. So Maribel quickly is like, yes, you're right, and she hides the picture away so she never has to see it again. Her husband meets this guy named Mr. Webster, and he's like, this guy's awesome, we're gonna meet him, and he's completely awesome, and well, Maribel meets him, and she's like, oh my god, he is awesome, and her husband turns around and is like, no, he's not. I don't like him. And I'm like, are you bipolar, dude? What? You were just talking him up, and now it's just no. You see, though, that Mr. Webster, who is a journalist, has taken a keen interest in Maribel. They're kind of chit-chatting, and she's noticing, like, certain things about him, sexual things. And she's getting, like, very, excited. But then she's not excited at the same token, but she's still talking him up, and she's like, he's awesome, and this and that, and that's when her husband kind of turns around and snaps and is like, no, he's not. So I start to assume, like, okay, maybe it's because he noticed this Webster guy checking out his wife and flirting with her that he's kind of like, no, he's not cool. Don't talk to him anymore. But he's kind of like, well, we still have to talk to him. And it's just weird. So you start to think that this could be the plot line. Mr. Webster trying to be a homewrecker, trying to ruin their marriage. Randomly, and I literally mean randomly, you find out that Maribel was a prostitute. Yes, okay, so that's the deep dark secret. She was a freaking prostitute. That's how she met her husband, and for some reason or another, her husband decides to marry a prostitute. I don't get it either. It's okay. So after that random discovery, which doesn't fit in anywhere because it didn't belong anywhere except for maybe when she was, talking to her family or something. I'm not exactly sure, but you randomly find out. She also then is told she has to go take photographs of Indians because her husband's getting pissy with her pissy attitude of being trapped up in the house. And he's like, you could go out, take some freaking photographs. So she goes and she takes some photographs of the Indians. Yeah, I don't get it either. It's okay. In that time, she finds out about her sister, Ida. Now, she knew Ida lived in London from when she went and visited her mother, who kind of, nonchalantly was like, Ida lives here, and Ida's apparently her little sister whom she abandoned, and she felt really bad about it because they were supposed to run away together, but she kind of just left her. So she finds out Ida's married to this man named Dr. Coffin. After that, she discovers that Dr. Coffin works with these Indians who are in a show, and she is at the show taking photographs, and she meets this Dr. Coffin guy. Well, he's wearing a mourning flower because apparently his little boy died. Little son, little girl, little baby, I don't remember which it was, but his little baby just died. Maribel then feels inclined because apparently she kind of views him suddenly as her brother-in-law, and she's just like, I lost a son too. Oh my god, you're like, okay, so she's a prostitute and she was pregnant. So she lost her little son. Did he die or was he taken from her? But then, you randomly again find out that she was sent to a nunnery and they took her baby away. But you don't know if the baby's dead. So, in fact, that smudge that was on the photograph could not have been her baby because she doesn't know if he's dead or not. So after that random discovery, that is it for the Indian photography. She doesn't go and try to contact Ida, but she decides, I'm going to write Ida letters. And she attempts to write many letters and she fails at each one. The next thing that happens is they're at this dinner party, and Mr. Webster finds out that Maribel has spirit photography. Now, this man is very religious. He is very keen to his family. He is a religious, good hearted man, or so he claims he is. He finds out she has a spirit photograph, and she tells him, "No, I don't. I destroyed it. It's not real," and so on and so forth. He goes kind of AWOL and crazy and starts like hissing at her. Not like, like a cat, but, talking wise, and telling her she's a whore and that, she's a horrible person and a demon. And, he's a married man. And then you kind of start putting two together, like, okay, he's sexually attracted to her. I'm getting this now. And, she's kind of offended by it, but she never tells her husband. And I don't get that. You tell your husband these things. You do. I would. Let him kick his ass. So after the dinner, Maribel then decides, I don't like Mr. Webster anymore. I don't. Mr. Webster then develops this kind of vendetta against them. While her husband's setting up this protest for, the working class people or the lower class people, he publishes this paper telling everybody where to be so the police know where to go. And just things like that. So he's kind of sabotaging it almost, but he's claiming to be part of the cause. Maribel is not part of this protest. Instead, she kind of goes to a party to watch. I don't get that either. Her husband's out there protesting, though, and it's supposed to be this peaceful protest, but the police kind of use weapons against these people and beat them. I think one guy dies. Edward's severely injured, and Maribel thinks he dies, and you start to see maybe she does in fact love her husband, and although you don't really see it much, but her reaction was kind of sad. But turns out he was just severely injured, and then he's arrested. Court then happens, and Edward is sent to prison for like 12 weeks. I think it is something like that. I don't 14, 12 weeks. I don't exactly remember. And Maribel, after the court hearing, she's outside, and Mr. Webster goes to talk to her, and she just kind of goes crazy and tells him off like it's nobody's business. The next thing that happens is Maribel meets Ida. Oh, you're so excited, you say, because you're like, finally, they're going to reconcile. They're going to fix their relationship. Sisterly love is just going to bloom all over the pages. Okay, basically, Maribel and her pregnant friend go to a museum. Maribel sees her, plain sister, and she kind of begins to panic. And her plain sister's like, oh, Ida's here. So Maribel's like, oh my God, Ida's here. You think she'd be excited. You think she would, run off and try to find her. That is not the case. Not the freaking case at all. Instead, Maribel pushes her pregnant friend out of the museum, and the pregnant friend falls downstairs and hurts her arm, breaks it actually. Maribel starts screaming for help, and who's to come? Ida. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that would have to be the most awkward situation ever. I mean, it's pouring down rain, pregnant ladies laying on the floor crying, and two sisters who haven't seen each other for years and probably hate each other's guts. Well, one probably hates their guts. Is standing across from each other, looking at each other like, holy shit, man! Basically, what you have is Ida's focusing on the pregnant lady. She's like, we need to get her out of the rain. We have to get her moved. We have to fix her arm. There needs to be a real doctor. Where's the real doctor? And things like that. Wow, Maribel, the one who was pushing her friend out of the building because she didn't want to be seen by Ida, because she doesn't want her friend to know that her and Ida are related, or the plain Jane, is like, no, we need to go. Is sitting there on the ground going, Ida, it's me. Ida, I'm so sorry I left you when we were children. And I'm sitting there reading this like, bitch, you pushed your pregnant friend down a flight of stairs to avoid this situation, and now you decided the time to do this? Now? The anger just kind of spewed out of me, and I can see Ida's anger, I would feel it too, we have more important shit at hand, woman. After that, Maribel and her pregnant friend are kind of hanging out, and Maribel asks, oh, did you hear from your good Samaritan type of situation? And the pregnant lady's like, oh, yes, she came and picked up her scarf, because apparently a scarf was left there or something. Maribel then decides, this is the time to take action. I need to talk to Ida. Yes! Again, the plot line. You're like, yes, it's finally here. I know I'm more than halfway through the book, but it's here. Maribel then kind of debates between sending Ida a letter. Instead, she sends a letter to her mother and to her plain Jane sister. After she already told her plain Jane sister, I never want to see your face again. So she sends this letter, and it's quite a contradicting letter, because she's like, I need Ida's address, but don't ever contact me. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know how to send someone's address to someone without contacting them. That is quite the conundrum. So, as we can all figure, she never finds out. Her and Ida do cross paths again, though. Oh, yes, they do. And you're like, okay, yes, Ida's the plot line. Basically, this sick Indian guy shows up at Maribel's and Edward's flat, and I'm sitting there like, an Indian who doesn't speak English shows up at a flat. How? And he knew it was Maribel. He knew it was her flat, and I'm just sitting there like, how? Maribel then decides, I need to take him to Dr. Coffin. Dr. Coffin will know him. Dr. Coffin will know what to do because he's a sick Indian. Edward goes, okay, that's a good idea. Maribel is all like, I'll take him. You stay home, you rest, you do this, you do that. I don't know in what universe a husband would allow his wife, especially in the Victorian era, to climb into a carriage with someone they considered to be a savage. Like, seriously, I would be concerned for her safety. I was concerned for her safety. I mean, I know he's sick, and I know she could probably beat him with her umbrella, but I was concerned for her safety. She takes him to Dr. Coffin's house, and she's all like, you need to fix this Indian. And he's just kind of like, how the hell did you find him? I mean, because that's what all of us are asking. Like, how the hell did he find you? That's never explained, by the way, but he ends up taking the Indian to the hospital. Now, this is the part where it gets even more confusing. He takes Maribel's freaking carriage, the thing she needs to get home, and I don't understand it. I don't, because he should have his own carriage because he's a doctor. If he's a doctor and doing house calls, he needs a freaking carriage to get around. That's just my thought process. But he takes Maribel's carriage, and I understand. So that way it sets up the next scene, but it's so, stupid. Take your own damn carriage. Maribel's left at the doctor's house, lo and behold, and she's kind of like putzing around, waiting for Ida. Ida shows up, and they kind of have an explosion. Ida tells Maribel, I hate you, you abandoned me, you ruined our family, you this, you that, I never want to see you again. Maribel just leaves. I mean, I would kind of fight a little bit more, but she just leaves. After her husband is placed in jail, Maribel then decides that this is the time to go to Spain. Don't ask me, I don't get it either. She takes her maid and they go to Spain. I will admit this now, I didn't really read this bit. I kind of skimmed it because it was the maid the entire time just complaining about the weird food and Maribel eating. The description of that was nasty. Nasty. Maribel and her maid return 2 weeks before Edward is released from prison. Not much really happens, but her kind of panicking every time she sees a newspaper, like, oh my god, he's gonna know my deep dark secret, oh my god, type of situation going on. Edward is released. Something happens with his brother, I'm not exactly sure, but it could land him in a heap load of trouble, and Mr. Webster knows about it. So Maribel is kind of like, I'm taking this matter into my own hands because clearly my own dirty dark secrets don't matter enough. I'm going to instead fix this. She then goes and she kind of steals this photograph of Mr. Webster. She hires a prostitute because she knows how it happens. She knows how it goes down. And she kind of double exposes the photographs or something, and she blends the two so that way it looks like Mr. Webster has hired a prostitute. This good religious family man has hired a prostitute. Now, he never really did because she, manipulated the photos, but she takes it to Mr. Webster and she blackmails him. That is the end of the frickin' story. Now, to any of you out there, if you guys can find a solid plot line going in this, let me know below, please, because I don't see it. Now, onto the things that I liked and that I didn't like. It's probably easier to start off with what I didn't like. As we all can probably see, the lack of plotline just bothers me, and I just want to cry. Constantly throughout this book, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, oh my god, this is the plotline. This is it. This is what we've been waiting for, and then it just kind of disappears off the face of the book, and you're sitting there like, what? But, why would you even mention it if it had nothing to do with anything? I mean, the Ida thing, okay, that goes up until about a little bit past midway book, but that had nothing, again, to do with anything. Yeah, she wanted to find her sister, she found her sister, but she didn't fight to make amends with her sister. Then you think it's Mr. Webster, who, yes, okay, goes up to the end of the book, but you're still just sitting there like, he wasn't a real plotline, he wasn't really doing anything up until the end. He didn't sabotage anything remotely, except for, Edward's protest. All throughout the story, you think you're going to find out these deep, dark secrets of Maribel's, and all you find out is she had a baby she lost, and she was a freaking prostitute. Okay, I understand how that could be frowned upon, but, that's not a solid plotline. There should have been a bigger, deeper, darker secret. Maybe she murdered someone, but that's not the case. Another thing I really did just dislike is the random flashbacks. I do not understand the random flashback. The random flashback of being a prostitute. The random flashback of someone named Vincent. The random flashback of her and Edward in frickin' Mexico. I don't get it. I don't get it. What was the point of it? I didn't care about her and Edward in Mexico on their honeymoon having sex. Did not care. Had nothing to do with that story. Nothing. What irks me even more is the lack of commas or the comma happy ass drunk woman happening. I'm like, that bothers the living shit out of me. I shouldn't have to sit here and edit your damn story while reading it because I can't contain myself because I'm like, I have to fix it. I mean, okay, yes, that's part of my own brain issues, but I had to fix it, and I shouldn't have had to ever fix a book. I shouldn't. I'm sorry. It's littered with little pen marks. Maribel, in general, is just an annoying character. I want to strangle her throughout half of this book. I mean, seriously, just strangle her. You have Maribel, who's married to Edward. Edward, is married to a prostitute, but he's still visiting prostitutes. And how do you know this? Because Maribel has many experiences where she knows he's cheating on her. She kind of goes through this moment where she's sad about it almost, and she wants to say something to him, but she never does. She never freaking does. Instead, she just promotes her love for him and still sleeps with him. If I knew my husband was sleeping around with prostitutes or anyone in general, I would not be sleeping with them anymore. I mean, God knows what you could contract. I mean, granted, okay, yeah, he slept with a prostitute, which was her, and he probably contracted something from her, but for God's sakes, man, pull yourself together. Maribel also is just a bland and boring character. I mean, okay, she's meant to have these deep, dark secrets, but they aren't deep, dark secrets at all because you find them out so early in the story and you're like, you're expecting more of it. I really expected her to like murder an entire city or something deep and dark, or maybe she was a dude. I don't know. Mr. Webster was also a weird ass character. It was kind of like Claire Clark specifically went out of her way to make him uber weird. I mean, milky eyes, that's creepy. Not to mention the way he kind of watches her, like a hawk. I'm like, he's supposed to be a religious family man, and he's watching her and like tracing every curve to her body. That's not a family man, that's a pervert. The dialogue's another thing I did not like. Most of it was not believable. The things that they would say to each other is just, you're sitting there like, okay, that just made me feel awkward inside, thank you. The dialogue's just not believable, and that is the biggest downfall between characters. Is you want it to be believable, you want to be able to be sucked into these characters and like believe every word that leaves their mouth, and you're supposed to feel for them, and I felt nothing except for Edward. I felt really bad for him when he got trampled. I mean, really bad, and he was arrested, and you could see it on his face that he's like, I'm still not gonna quit, and I really enjoy that, at least about him. He was a fighter, because he's Scottish. On to the things that I did like about this book. I like the Victorian era, and the cover's pretty. Yeah, that's all I got. Shit. This is my review on Beautiful Lies by Claire Clark. I give this book a D. I mean, it's not the best thing I've ever read in my life, and I did push myself all the way through it. I admit that. I did. And, it was better than City of Dark Magic by Magnus Flyte, but all in all, I really wish I hadn't read it. I mean, if I was to ever read it, I wish I had bought it in paperback and not spent 15 frickin' pounds on it. On to my next book. With my October-November book haul, I had a good many books to get through, so instead of picking them out at random, I had to use up one of my jars and, well, to-be-read books. Tarnished is my next book. Bam! Look at this book. I was really excited about this book when I was talking about it in my book haul, so yay, this was the first one I picked up. Mild-mannered Peg has never asked too many questions about her unusual upbringing, her absent father, her deceased mother, her bedridden aunt. Peg can't remember much before the age of 10, but she's happy to fill the gaps with fond memories of home-cooked dinners and walks along the seaside. All grown up, Peg discovers she had an uncle who died many years ago. The holes in her childhood memories start to trouble her. Yet, as the skeletons come tumbling out of her family closet and the past begins to reveal itself, Peg starts to wonder whether her youthful lack of curiosity might not have been a good thing. A very good thing indeed. I'm excited for this book. I'm not too sure what's happening, but apparently family secrets. I love family secrets, and I thought that had a lot to do with, Beautiful Lies, but it had nothing to do with it, so I'm kind of upset about that. Beautiful Lies by Claire Clark is a D. I would say rent it from your library if you are really intrigued by it. Do not buy it. It's not worth the purchase, in my opinion, and I'm kind of upset I spent as much money on it as I did. Next book up is Tarnished by Julia Crouch, so keep tuned for that. Until then, you guys, happy reading. Bye!